Let's get further analysis now from our panel. And joining me from Tehran is Dr. Seyed Mostafa Khoshcheshm. He is a specialist on Iranian affairs. In Washington, we have Gerald Michael Feierstein. He is a former U.S. ambassador to Yemen and now an analyst with the Middle East Institute. And completing our panel from Aix-en-Provence in France is Moroccan journalist Aboubakr Jamai. Thanks all so much for joining us. Let me begin in Tehran. Seyed Khoshcheshm, who is pulling the strings of conflict here?
Well, as a matter of fact, this seems to be another round of, another plan by the United States and Saudi Arabia and Israel in order to strain Tehran's relations with the outside world, to push Tehran, to make it an isolated state, especially on the eve of declaring their future plan for the nuclear deal with Tehran. This is nothing new. This has been this has been happening all throughout the last 4 decades. Just a few years ago, the Saudis forced the many Arab states to drop ties with Tehran or to lower their relations with the country. And Bahrain, the UAE, and many others either cut off their ties or lowered their relations, economic and political relations with Tehran. Iran has not been present in that part of the world, in Morocco, and even the Western media outlets have not been touching any kind of relations between Iran and the Polisario Front ever since mid-90s. Now, suddenly, they come up with some kind of allegations against Tehran when they are also doing the same with regard to Tehran's ties with other nations outside, in this Arab Muslim region. So it's nothing strange. I believe that this is like the years 2011 and 12 when similar attempts were done with the same, goals and objectives.
Okay. Ambassador Feierstein, is this the hand of the U.S. and Saudi and Israel as an alliance?
No, of course it's not. The United States has no real interest in pressuring Iran over intervention in North Africa. This is something that is entirely new and different, but it's part of a pattern that we've seen of increasing use by IRGC and their affiliates, Hezbollah and others, use of Iranian embassies around the world. This time, of course, the allegation is that it's the Iranian embassy in Algiers. We've also seen similar allegations about Iranian use of their embassies in Central Asia in order to spread instability and create problems for countries that they don't agree with. As your previous guest said, there was a history of problems between Morocco and Iran. Now they've come back again in a completely unexpected way.
Okay, Ambassador, I just want to be clear, because I'd actually heard otherwise, perhaps mistakenly before. You do believe that Iran has a role, then, with the Polisario Front in Western Sahara?
Well, this is the allegation. I don't have evidence one way or the other to support it. All I'm saying is that if it's true, it fits in a pattern of Iranian behavior elsewhere that is established.
Okay. So it may or may not be Iran, but it's definitely not the hand of the United States, Saudi, or Israel. Aboubakr Jamai, let me get your thoughts.
Well, this story is very hard for me to believe, because based on the well understood geostrategic interest of all the actors that are supposedly involved in this story, I don't see what is the upside for the Algerians or the Polisario to get Iran's and Hezbollah's help here. I refer you to the U.S. Department website on Algeria. Algeria is considered a strong U.S. ally. The new national security advisor to Donald Trump, John Bolton, who's a supporter of the Sahrawi cause. Why would the Polisario and Algeria antagonize the US by reaching out to Hezbollah and Iran. And frankly, I don't see why Iran or Hezbollah would want to be involved in this story. I think when one is more knowledgeable of what's going on inside Morocco and the bind that Morocco is in vis-a-vis the Gulf countries, then I think the story makes a little bit more sense. Because if you ask me about my view, I think that you need to put Qatar in the map to understand why Morocco is essentially trying to please Saudi Arabia, because Morocco had actually taken a stand which I believe is a pretty balanced one between Qatar and Saudi Arabia. And as you know, this is a no-no vis-a-vis the Saudis. And I think as a compensation somehow, and it's only my theory, as a compensation, they have basically used the anti-Iranian, anti-Hezbollah card.
Okay. Aboubakr, so again, to clarify your thoughts then, Saudi has indeed put pressure on Rabat to cut diplomatic ties.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it might be the case that the Saudis are putting pressure, but it also might be the case that the Moroccans, who are in need actually of Gulf countries, help. And I would refer you to Morocco's finances in this case. You know that the Gulf countries have bankrolled many non-oil exporting countries in the region to stave off the Arab Spring, and Morocco had a promise of $5 billion from Gulf countries. The problem is among the countries in the Gulf region who have accepted to give this aid is Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the Emirates, and Qatar. And this money is not coming along as it was supposed to come. And if you look at what's happening in Morocco with the reef uprising, with what happened in Jada, etc., there is an issue, there is an economic issue which is bedeviling the Moroccan regime today. And they need to keep a good relationship with the Saudis and the Gulf countries in general, because the Moroccan regime today needs their financial support.
Okay, then let me understand. You think Rabat has done this unilaterally to please its Gulf allies for Rabat's own interests, or am I still misunderstanding you?
No, of course, for Arabs, everyone does things for one's own interests. So obviously, it's for a Rabat regime's own interests, and what probably the Moroccan regime believes is the interest of Morocco as a whole. So it's important, as I mentioned, economically, strategically speaking, for Morocco to remain close to Saudi Arabia. I began by saying I don't see the upside for Hezbollah, the Iranians, and mostly for the Algerians, because Morocco is implicating Algeria in this, and the Polisario. So the story falls apart when you add Algeria and Polisario, because I simply don't see the upside of it. So if the Algerian part and the Polisario part falls apart, how can you justify the Iranian and Hezbollah's part? Because the story has to be consistent.
Okay, Seyed, I mean, you see eye to eye on certain issues there, that this is not the hand of Iran, at least, but Aboubakr is saying that this is more of a unilateral decision on behalf of Rabat. Do you still insist that Saudi and the U.S. are putting direct pressure on Morocco themselves to cause this discord with Iran?
Well, there are a couple of interpretations by all experts in the region. Either Rabat has been under much pressure to do the same, or because all states that have good terms with the United States and its allies in the region, they know that the U.S. is going to become growingly hostile towards Iran with regard to the nuclear deal. So they are preparing for hostilities, increased hostilities, and they want to show to the U.S. and Israel and Saudi Arabia that have formed a single front against Iran in an alliance that's going to cost them also a lot, to show them that they are contributing their role as well, because they have wider relations in terms of economy, politics, in security with these U.S. allies in the region, be it Israel or the Arab states in the Persian Gulf. What matters here is that Iran has never had any wide presence in Morocco. You know, the two have had ups and downs in their relations. Even at times that they had relations, these relations were at very minimum levels, in terms of economy, politics, regional cooperation, security cooperation. They have never been, they've never had excellent relations. And you may also compare it with Iran's part and Iran's presence in Lebanon, where it's supporting Hezbollah. Iran has very wide presence in there. the theme of diplomacy is, that there is a huge number of people in there at the Iranian embassy, and also in Syria, the same is true. So you may also take a look at the nearby countries. The countries that are in the same region that Morocco is, like Libya. Iran is absent there. Hezbollah is absent there. Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the global powers are in there, but Iran is not active in that part of the world at all. I believe that this is a plot, either voluntarily by Morocco for the reasons that I said, or it's been requested by them to do this cut-off relations in order to start disreputing Iran, damaging Iran's reputation and face, as well as that of Hezbollah, in order to, damage their face in the world. This has happened, once. It happened in 2011 and 2012. We have had 9 plots similar to this then, so it could happen again.
Okay. Ambassador Feierstein, I mean, you said you haven't seen the evidence that Iran is pulling the strings here, but can it at least be said then that Morocco and Western Sahara are now part of a proxy war between Iran and Hezbollah on one side and the anti-Iranian elements at play on the other side?
Well, I think, we don't want to delve into conspiracy theories and speculation. I mean, these are all very speculative kinds of arguments. I mean, the fact is that Morocco broke off relations with Iran in 2009 as part of a larger movement to push back on Iranian intervention in Bahrain. The Moroccans then reestablished the relationship at a lower level in 2014. It's been going along at that level. The Moroccan foreign minister was touring the region. He was in Washington. He was in Paris a few weeks ago. And he certainly didn't suggest that Morocco was looking to join any kind of broad Sunni front against Iran. In fact, his argument was that really the Sunni states needed to figure out how to have a reasonable relationship with the Iranians. So this is quite an unexpected departure from where Morocco was just a few weeks ago. And there is no evidence that the Saudis or others were pressuring Morocco to come up with some kind of argument against Iran. There's plenty of reason to be unhappy with Iran without adding Morocco to the mix.
Okay, then let me ask Aboubakr, help us understand then the reality on the ground in Morocco, the Western Sahara and the Polisario Front. Is the Polisario Front a real military force to be reckoned with at this point? Could we see a return to violence between Moroccan forces and the Polisario forces, akin to what we saw decades ago when there was, indeed, civil war?
Frankly, I don't see that happening because the Western Sahara is too close to Western Europe, and it's too close basically to Algerian oil. It means that Western countries and the US won't let the conflict fester and turn into a hot war. So I don't see that really happening. There is a stasis now. The conflict is kind of in a situation where nothing is really happening. Morocco has proposed a new plan, which is an autonomy plan. So instead of going after the organization of a referendum, a self-determination referendum, Morocco has proposed an autonomy plan. In other words, Western Sahara will become a region in some kind of federalized kingdom of Morocco, and that has been rejected by the Polisario, which is adamant into getting the self-determination process ongoing and having a referendum.
Understood. Aboubakr, we're going to have to leave it there. I'd like to thank all three of you so much for joining us on The Newsmakers.